Welcome to the Ask Brien podcast radio show, where you'll hear from some of the most successful founders and CEOs of businesses and startups, sharing their best advice for success and even some stories on how their mistakes actually make them even more successful. Now, here are your hosts, Brien and Tracy.
Welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHS 1220 and 98.1 FM in the Los Angeles Basin. Is that correct? Is that the Los Angeles Basin, Patrick?
I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a basin, but we're in Los Angeles. Well, Los Angeles County.
Well, I think that's a basin.
I mean, I'm not a geography guy, so I wouldn't really know exactly. But I'll take your word for it.
Well, so everybody that comes on this show, they don't understand why Ask Brien is spelled ASKBRIEN. And like today, we don't have an engineer. We replace this with AI, which is what we're doing today for our show on AI. But Mr. Engineer, will you try to explain to this crowd of thousands and thousands and thousands of people why in the world you spell Brien with an E? Because everybody they know, they spell the name B-R-Y-A-N, B-R-I-A-N, but the only Brien they know that's spelled with an E is Mr. O'Brien, who's down at the Irish pub having a beer.
Oh my. Well, there's a number of, kind of like themes of the Ask Brien show, and that's kind of why, it's spelled with an E. One of them is engineer, which also engineers, because now there's two engineers on this show. It's not just myself, but also Emily as well.
Because you couldn't do it yourself, you have to have help?
Not at all.
Oh.
Don't laugh, Emily. No, but also E also for Emily, because her name starts with an E, so that's a new one. Also, we have experts, because everybody that is brought onto the Ask Brien show is an expert in their field. Experience is another one, because everybody is very experienced in what they do. Other ones we have is empathy, or in this case, the lack of empathy that he's showing towards me right now.
Well, that's L-O-E.
L-O-E.
Lack of empathy.
I mean, if you're going to go based on, just the abbreviation, sure, but empathy starts with an E. And one that you also have is enthusiasm and...
excitement! Go!
That too. And am I forgetting any other ones, or did we pretty much did we cover all those?
You had excellence, you had experts.
Yep. Empathy.
Energy.
That was a new one. That's the one that Tracy likes to bring in. I usually give that for her.
Is that because you lack energy? Is that why?
No, I have plenty of energy.
Another LOE. Lack of energy, lack of empathy. There's a lot of lacking. We're a positive show, and we shouldn't be lacking anything.
That's real low of you, by the way. Hey-o.
We're not the Ask Brien with an L. Without any further ado, how do you spell ado?
A-D-I-E-U.
Why is that a word I like?
Because every single letter except for the D is a vowel.
Why do you like to talk in monotone? You're not very enthusiastic, excited, and you have lacking of energy.
It's because I have it literally down to a T. It's almost like clockwork.
But T is not an E.
That's true. I have it down to the E and the U.
All right. So we have a very special guest, and we have our co-host today. Co-host is Alex Grossman. Alex, you there?
I am here, Mr. Brien Johnson and Mr. Patty and Miss Emily. How are you all?
Alex is a special co-host, similar to like the Johnny Carson show when Jay Leno would appear before he started to appear every day. We have our special co-host, Alex Grossman, and a very, very, very special guest who's so excited with the E to be on our show. His name is Rajesh. Rajesh, are you there?
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
So,
you hear that excitement? That's incredible excitement right there. I was impressed.
I actually almost fell backwards off my chair. Patrick, thank God, you had some empathy, protected me from falling on the floor. But otherwise, I would have been flat on my can't say it. But anyway, back to reality sometimes. So, Rajesh, a couple of questions for you. What is the name of the company you have currently?
It's called Lincode.
And Lincode. And what does Lincode do?
Lincode is primarily helping manufacturers leverage AI and computer vision to automate some of their process.
So how is that different than having just computers or robots on the assembly line checking out products?
Absolutely. Great question. So robot does not have eyes to see. They all just have hands to move, and they need some programmer to, program them. But they cannot identify defects or, quality inspections cannot be done by robots. So AI with the computer vision is kind of an eyes for that robots to help them identify what's the defects, and then the robots eliminate the defective out of the lines.
So if it doesn't see, how can it find out if there's a scratch on the glass or there's a problem? How does that help? How can it work?
Yeah. So that is why we use cameras, and we use cameras on our AI to assist the robots to identify those defects and move them out of the line.
And your primary market is what? To manufacturers?
Yeah, we primarily focus on manufacturing companies.
Is there anything besides a manufacturer that might want a product like yours or service?
Of course, there are a lot of industry which might be requiring a product like this. One of them, the immediate industry is warehousing, where a lot of packaging is involved. So warehousing is one of the industry which might be requiring us.
So how would your product work if you had a warehouse?
So in a warehouse, it's very important to identify what kind of defects are happening on the boxes before it's sent out to their respective destination. Defects like, depressions or cut off in the, box, or label graphics not there, or barcode not sticked. So those are the kind of issues which can occur in a warehouse.
So is it a software, or what exactly is the Lincode?
Yeah, so we are primarily a software company, but we have actually integrated with various robots, conveyor systems on the factory, and various other control panels and PLCs in the manufacturer side, where we integrate our software with, and then help the manufacturers to eliminate any kind of defects in their line.
So I don't know much about the product or the service, but what I would think is, okay, manufacturing is definitely a possibility here and a strong possibility. But I would also think integration with robots or products that are used on the assembly lines and manufacturing lines, if you could get the software into those products, might be helpful. And since they've already got a connection with the manufacturers, that might be an angle. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely one of angle that we looked at.
And how old is your company?
We are technically 4 years old now.
And how did you come up with the idea for this company? And was it you or others?
Yeah, so we actually went to various manufacturers to identify what kind of challenges they have. After we heard, a couple of manufacturers coming to us and telling us, can we solve this particular challenge? So after that, we thought, if we can build a product for the entire industry, that will be better than just going as a service mode. So we went and, spoke to about 100 to 150 factories in the US and Europe. We asked them what are their top 10 challenges. So most of them said that, 86% of them said that, quality inspection is their biggest problem. And the reason for that is the investments made on the technology for the quality inspections didn't give them the desired return on investment. And they were kind of annoyed with the, repeated investments on the quality inspection lines, but not still fully able to automate the inspections, basically. So that was the primary reason why I found an opportunity to build something with AI and computer vision, and that's how we set out.
That's a very, very strong approach to take, and a very likelihood of success is definitely higher when you try to solve a problem that people have. So I think that has a lot of foresight to actually go in, try to figure out, there's a problem here, and then solve the problem for people. I mean, that's much different. Most businesses don't operate that way. Most businesses have more of an arrogant approach, which is we'll build a product, we'll build something that we think you need, and then try to sell it. You went from a completely different angle, I see, which is you said, hey, you went to the people and you found out what their problem was, and then you tried to solve it. I think that's a very good way of approaching things in business, to actually find out how to solve a problem that people have, as opposed to trying to maybe create something, maybe a problem doesn't even exist. So I applaud you on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
No problem. Was it you or was there other people involved in your company to start it?
So we have a team of people who are working on this. So I'm handling the sales and business development now. So we have a CTO who's taking care of the technology team. She's actually worked with companies like Microsoft and ADP, and she actually takes care of the technology in terms of building products and product roadmap, basically.
Now, obviously, there's got to be a coder on the team because of software. So, was that you, or is there somebody else on the team that actually built the code for this?
Yeah, so we started off in the factory floor. So we got an opportunity to build our product right on the factory floor with one of our large automotive customers. So he was actually, part supplier to some of the OEMs. So we had an opportunity to build our product right there. So we all went initially. I was also focused on the development. So we went along with the team. We identified how the visual inspection is done currently, and then we used various tools to identify what are the issues, which is, why these manufacturers are disappointed with technology, investments. And we figured that false calls was the biggest problem. Like, the product was good, but it said bad, and the product was bad, and it said good, and it went to the customers. So those are the false calls, which they wanted to eradicate. And we started to understand first why those false calls are occurring in the factory floor in the first place. We used various AI tools to identify that. And once we got the idea of, why these kind of issues are happening, then we set out, building a solution specifically to do a false calls. So you can think of like this, we are like an iPhone for a factory, where if you look at the iPhone's hardware, it's not like really big as Samsung. So we are actually, in iPhone, the AI controls your hardware specs, and that's why you are able to get a very good low light pictures, or even if you're shaky images, it fixes that. So AI does all of that job in your iPhone. So the same way, we have built a tool which can actually handle manufacturers' issues of the false calls, and that way we have reduced false calls by 80%.
So actually, this goes into the similar question regarding percentages. So if you do not have the Lincode product or service, okay, what is a typical quality assurance rate on a product, and how much of an increase do you typically get by using the Lincode?
Okay, so in the current industry, it's measured by parts per million, they say. So means if you scan 1 million parts in your assembly line, how many wrong calls you have? That's the measurement of how effective the inspection is happening. So they had an industry standard of 100 to 150 false calls, which is high enough for getting penalized by their, up the chain clients, basically. So our objective was, to have these false calls reduced. Now we are looking at 0 to 4 ppm, which means you scan 1 million parts with our vision system, it's going to give you 100% accuracy. So it's either 0 false calls, or maximum we have seen is 4 false calls.
How can it have such a high percentage? I mean, I get that in a million parts you're going to have, 50 to 100, whatever. That makes sense to me. But 0 to 4, I mean, that is such a small number. I mean, I'm just astounded that it could be that high. What is your basis to determine the 0 to 4? Is that just based on the companies that have been using your product so far, or how do you come up with that?
So today, manufacturing is getting really competitive, and OEMs no longer accept, any kind of defects reaching them. Like, for example, if you take a large OEM like a Ford or a GM or any other large OEMs, they don't take their suppliers supplying them a defective part. So what happens is it affects their, production plan. Let's say they're going to build 100 cars today, and if the supplier is giving him 10 wrong products, then what it means is they'll have to wait for a good product to come from the supplier to have the entire 10 car produced for that particular day. So it hampers the OEM basically. So it's become very competitive. So it used, a couple of years ago, 4 ppm was good. That was enough. Like, you can supply 4 parts out of your entire shipment. But now it's becoming 0 ppm. So it's really getting competitive for manufacturers to, making sure that whatever they supply to the OEMs, it has to be 100% accurate. Otherwise, they're getting penalized. So because of which they're focusing a lot on the quality aspects to make sure, it reaches with 0 ppm. So our objective when we started building was this, our clients gave us ultimatum that, it has to be our need. Otherwise, technology is again a failure for us. And that's why we focused on these aspects, identifying what kind of issues causing these false calls. And we set out and we fixed those false calls first. And then we actually used the computer vision and AI to create a huge data model. So we had to make sure that we have a lot of data to work with. And we cannot go to every customer and ask those many data, basically. Like, we are talking about millions of data. So what we did was we went to each and every manufacturers of plastics, and we took defect data from various manufacturers globally. So we have now a pile of 50 million data sets. On top of that, we are building our model. So this gives us the accuracy level required on the floor for each customer. So eventually, we just take about 10 to 15 defect images from a factory floor when we deploy for that particular customer. So that sets us apart.
Who are your competitors?
We have two kind of competitors. One is traditional computer vision or a machine vision kind of companies, conventional companies, which is focused on the hardware cameras. So it's like Cognex and Keyence. Cognex and Keyence have about 60% of the market share in the US. So Cognex is a US-based company doing about 900 million of revenue. And Keyence is about 6 billion revenue, and they're based out of Japan. And these are the industry leaders currently when it comes to visual inspections in the floor. And there are a set of AI companies as well. And there's a lot of AI companies, growing every day. So this 60% of market share is diluting now with the advent of all the AI companies. But this typical AI companies go on a generic approach of data science or a deep learning model. So deep learning, you need a lot of images. And that is where we are, better than them on the AI.
Alex, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I really want to ask a few questions because what Lincode's doing is pretty exciting from a manufacturing standpoint. I mean, I know a little bit about that, having run a few of these lines, but I'm interested because this technology really, robotics and getting the entire manufacturing process to let's call it a more automated process. A lot of people are a little upset about that because those low-paying jobs tend to go away. But let's face it, if you want productivity, you need to automate it. But one of the problems with automation is always exactly as you guys were talking about in the beginning. The barcode's on crooked, things are on upside down. Maybe there's a scratch in the surface, so it ends up being a return. So I know that that's true with just about every industry. But there's this technology that I'm familiar with called machine vision, where they use cameras already, and they're able to read and look for imperfections. But I'm interested in, for Rakesh, how you decided that AI would be better at this rather than having these standards that machine vision has used before, like this is good, this is a go, this is a no-go. How does AI make that better?
Sure, that's a great question, Alex. So, machine vision uses conventional or a very age-old mechanism of identifying defects. So they use something called golden image template matching. So it just compares good and bad with one single good or maybe 2 or 3 images max. So it compares with these 3 images and then says, okay, this particular product is good or bad. So that's the basis of a conventional machine vision system, basically. Whereas AI is like, AI, all very well that it's a machine learning, right? So you're teaching a machine about what's good and what's bad, and then it has its own intelligence, starts recognizing, even if it has not seen it before, it recognizes that yes, this is a good product or this is a bad product. So just to give you an example, if you teach a machine what is a cat, it can identify Siamese cat, it can identify a normal cat, Persian cat, it can identify different varieties of cats. So that's the way, it's something similar to a child, you teach few things. Child learns as the child grows. The same way in machine learning, if you teach the computer with some data, and once it starts seeing every day, it keeps getting better and better, and that's how it learns. So we understood that in manufacturing, when we went to these early customers and talked to them to understand what are their challenges. So we figured that this machine vision cameras are not effectively working for them. So that's primarily because this machine vision cameras, if you teach them in a specific way, the orientation cannot be changed. Even 30 degrees of change in the orientation, machine vision will throw it as an error, basically. So it won't understand that there is a change. And even detecting similar colors stacked over each other, they were not detecting. So these are the constraints of machine vision technology. So it's not because the companies which are manufacturing, they were bad, but the technology was not mature enough. But AI was, going to supersede that and, clear those problems. Because in AI, you're teaching what is a product. So however you keep, whatever the orientation you're going to keep, it's going to work.
So from a productivity standpoint, then, what I'm hearing you say is that in a line, you bring up a line, and it's actually going to get better over time because of the AI learning. And so you're going to have less human interaction, is what I would say, from a QC standpoint. and then you're able to go back and essentially go to the workers or to the robots and adjust them and say, hey, this is good and this is bad based on the feedback you got. So it becomes this kind of closed loop feedback. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right.
So how come the people who were building these QC systems and systems before didn't just bring in AI? It seems like they own the hardware and they have to have some software. So why didn't they just do this? Where does your company fit in this? How did you see this as an opportunity? Did they come to you and you're selling to them, or did you just see that yields needed to be better? What drove this from a business standpoint?
Sure. So Machination Companies, they are primarily a camera hardware company. So they manufacture the cameras, they build those cameras specifically. So for them to adopt to a new technology and infuse that into the cameras, it's not going to be a straightaway easy thing, because their business, they're doing 900 million of revenue only from the cameras, right? So they cannot go and, adopt to AI business, with the cameras. It's not possible, because the cameras only can take the old technology. And AI, with the deep learning, it needs much more powerful hardware than the cameras that they already have. So it's not going to be easy to fit in AI into their camera ecosystem. So they needed to have separate software, and that's why they were not encouraged to, change the technology and give a different solution. So they were only going with the conventional cameras and conventional system. But now, I'm talking about this, 3 years, 4 years back when we started off. But now they have acquired some of our AI companies, and they are actually trying to compete with in the AI space. But since they are not built ingrown, and they have acquired some other company, it's not a product which is built from ground up. So it's basically they have built as a product and they went to a customer, and that's how they've gone. So what we have done is we have actually, since we are a software centric company, and we can work with any kind of a hardware. So this opens up for the customer, any manufacturer. Actually, it helps them to go with a lower cost hardware. We have used even $100 cameras compared to $10,000 camera in machine vision. So we use $100 cameras. So if it's a static environment, you don't need an expensive camera at all. So they can go with multiple cameras and inspect multiple products in one go and reduce their turnaround time to inspect the product. So this is the benefit they get out of AI.
So do you see this as like democratizing the overall industry, lowering the cost, making manufacturing more efficient? And is that what your business model is going forward, increasing the efficiency at a low cost? Or what are the top 3 poles that you guys pull to be able to get people to make this investment? Because I'm sure there's a higher investment for a company to employ AI than if they were just to use other means like machine vision, or maybe you're still trying to get people to come off of the human QA testing. And what industries, and the second part of that question is, what industries will take advantage of this first, do you think?
Yeah, sure. So, it is basically, the focus of our product or platform, I would call, is primarily to reduce the cost or democratize, as you said, to in the manufacturing industry. So we want to keep the cost low by using off-the-shelf cameras, and it's only our software licensing cost, which we charge a yearly recurring revenue. And then computer hardware, that's all they need to get started. And in some cases, we can use even the normal mobile phone on the floor if they have to scan some barcode or a QR code before they send off the products out to their customers. So we give that mobility. So they don't have to buy a specific camera for that. They can use their existing hardware. And we also use drones at sometimes, for taking inventory of the warehouse, basically. So those are the benefits we give using the third-party cameras. And when it comes to, who are going to be the early adopters for this, so we started with automotive manufacturers because they had the biggest problem, because they had to produce a lot and they had to give it to their customers quickly. So this helped. And then the electronics manufacturers, all the printed circuit boards, you would have heard now there's a big short supply in the chips.
Chip shortage, sure.
So, yeah. So it's going to really help that industry as well to get the products going. And one of the reasons why the shortage happens is, like, I was talking to a San Jose-based electronics manufacturer, contract manufacturer. He actually said no to a NASA contract of about $3 to $4 million. So the reason why he said that is because the machine vision which was inspecting his circuit boards. And after, machine actually inspects, he had a manual employee looking at each and every part of this circuit board to see if there is any defect. This was, slowing down his productivity. It became like imagine like a 20-lane highway in his production and then 2-lane highway on a quality inspection. That was the scenario for him. So because of which he was scared that he was not able, if he's not able to fulfill the NASA's contract, he might get blacklisted and he may not be able to supply to anybody. So that's the reason he said no to a big contract every year that he was supposed to get. So the reason, why this happens is because of, low false rate, basically, or a high false rate. So with this, AI approach, now we are able to eliminate that need of additional person looking at all the boards. So that person can be effectively used in other departments. So now this gets completely automated and the production is completely, matching the, inspection. Both are matching each other. So there is no bottleneck for them. So that is why electronics is another quick adopter of our solutions, basically. But other conventional manufacturing also is catching up.
Right. And one last question on that, and taking it a little the business side away from that, is that it seems like you've got a pretty big sales or business development goal ahead of you because you have to go to the individual companies that have the product lines rather than the people who manufacture the robots, right? But you have to have an ecosystem for them. So you're doing outreach mostly to the countries where most of the manufacturing is done. Is that the way you're doing it, or are you going to specific people? They use these robots, therefore I'm going to go to those customers. Well, what's your approach there? Or all the above?
First thing is, yeah, sure. We don't need a robot to be there in every customer place. So we help them with a simple automation as well without the robots also. So that's the first thing there. And in terms of who we are going to as a customer, we have a global customers now. Like we are already serving to 12 plus locations globally. That includes US, Europe, and other Asian countries as well. So we are doing everywhere. And in terms of, I think I've answered your main questions there.
So a lot of people are calling in and asking, how did you get your first customer? And how did you decide to, and two, so one is how did you get your first customer? And two is, it sounds to me like it's a lot of money and very expensive to do all that coding before you got that first customer. So, I mean, did you save your pennies? How are we able to do that?
So actually, we worked with the industry partners. So, once we went about with the various manufacturers, identified what's the challenge, we started working with one customer. So we told them that, we will give you this, results of whatever we do the research work, and we would love to start with your company. And we offered them like a beta cost where we said we will not charge you till the product works fine, and then you can have the product to be used for a certain milestone. Like we said, once we go live, from then 6 months you can use it for free of cost, and then after that you can pay us. So they agreed for that because they also had a compelling problem to solve. So they accepted our offer and they gave us an opportunity to work with them. And it was a automotive manufacturer, and we started working on their floor. We went out with our team there. We set up our systems there, and we started working on their floor right in their with their own product. And that's where we had a lot of learnings, and which is what I really, definitely recommend all the entrepreneurs to do, so that they can understand the feel of what actually your customers go through and understand how you can overcome that. So that's where the user experience point of view comes in, because who are the people who are going to actually use the product, who's your users, and what do they expect. All of these learnings can be there as a practical way as you learn from those customers. So that's the opportunity we got, and we actually built the product on the floor. And once we rolled out, the customer was very happy, and he actually introduced us to his own network of people. And we started only growing with word of mouth. Only referrals actually was the way out for us. And then we started working with various partners like robotic guys who are producing robots, who are installing robots, and then automation guys in the factory floor. A lot of automation guys are there who are doing that. So we partnered with them, and they used to give us the, and that's how we started growing.
The second part of that question was relating to the capital investment that you would need to build this product, right? So, I mean, or I guess it's a service since it's software, right? I would think that takes many, many hours to build it and many, many labor and costs. So how did you do that? Because what if you build a product and then you only have one customer? It's not really feasible. It's only feasible when you have multiple customers.
Yeah, sure. So initially we sacrificed as founders. So we didn't take any pay for almost 6 months. Nothing absolutely, and then we were only building the product. So it was only between me and my co-founder we started that, and we actually started getting some traction built with that. So after 6 months, we started doing some revenue, and we hired few people, and then we were paying the guys from those money that we raised from our customers. So we told these guys that we cannot pay you like an industry standard. We gave them some equity to be part of our team and grow with us. And once we had the traction built, then we went to some of the early stage investors and also accelerators who could understand our market, and they liked our product and they put in $250K for us.
You mentioned the co-founder, and we haven't used his name, so could you introduce it to the co-founder?
Her name is Ritika. He actually is my co-founder.
And what's his last name?
Ritika Nigam.
How long have you known her, Rajesh? Did you guys work together before, or did you just come together for this project?
No, fortunately, we worked before with a couple of other use cases. So this is my fourth venture. I have done 3 years before this. So in one of my companies, she came in as a consultant for us. She helped us to put together a few things, and she was technically very sound. And she helped us to build a product, and that's when we met. And before that, actually, we were looking for some consultant to help us out on a technical work. So we sent out to friends, and we sent it in some of the entrepreneurial groups that we are looking for somebody to help us on the consulting group. So she found us and she came to our office and we met, and we told the problem statement, and she said she can get going. And that's how we met, and that's how we got together.
What was the time frame from the time you guys met and decided to do something like this before you actually had a product that you were able to sell?
So the first product took us about 12 months to build the product, and after that, another 12 months for a stable platform to be ready. But initial 12 months, we didn't make much of a revenue because we were building the product. And after that, we started making revenue. So once we released our first product, we started making revenue. And then we started working on making the product better, and we launched our platform last year.
Are you actually optimizing the product on site? So if you have a customer, or doing it remotely, if you have a customer and they say to you, okay, I've got this product, running, but I'm not sure I'm getting the results I want. Do you optimize it, or just go, well, just let it learn and it'll do it on its own? Or how do you guys handle that?
Yeah, sure. So we actually, once we deploy initially, we give a one week of staging. We do that typically. In that staging, we identify how effective the model is. So whatever we have to know, if the product is working fine or not, we will know in that 1 week's time. So that's learnings in the past couple of years that we have been deploying. So within that 1 week period, we will catch those irregularities or false calls, basically. False calls is the biggest concern there. So that's what we look for in this 1 week of staging. And once we figure that, what it is, and once we fix it, and after that, there is no looking back. So as I said, AI actually has its own intelligence, and that's, as the day progresses, it keeps getting better. So it's never going to, go bad.
Is there a platform that you guys use for your AI, or is it a self-built one? I mean, like, are you using like Watson or something, or you do have your own platform that you base it off of?
So in terms of product, it's our own. We filed 2 patents so far. It's our own complete product that we have built, and it's a native coding that we have done. And in terms of deployment, yes, we can deploy it on any platform. Like, we have containerized our product, so it can be deployed on a Linux or a Windows machine, or if it's a cloud, we have actually tested with AWS, Azure, and the Kubernetes and Google Cloud.
What about Linux or other languages?
Yeah, so Linux also we have tested. It works. Linux or Windows, it works. Yeah,
because that's open source, right? So we're coming to the end of the show. People want to get more information from you. They go to what's your Lincode.ai?
.ai. Yeah.
Okay. LIN.
Lin.
POD.
POD.
Okay. Thank you very much. You're listening to the Ask Brien Radio Show, KHCS 1220, 98.1 FM. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ask Brien Radio Show. You can listen to us every Thursday on KTHS AM 1220 and FM 98.1 or via Facebook Live or anytime wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit AskBrien.com to join the conversation and ask us your business questions, and we'll answer them on our next episode. That's AskBrien.com.